Hey, okay, so we're back again. And in the second recording, what we're doing is the second hunt case, which is the insider trend hunt. The first one we had looked at the DOS or DDoS, distributed denial of service attack, and we saw how we can leverage offline tools like Logpasser Studio to do a deep dive analysis on data or logs and help us find meaningful ISEs that actually can help us better understand what had happened in terms of the attack flow, the path, then also the attacker IP address, user agents that were used for this particular one. We want to do an insider hunt case now. I'm working for a company. I've actually there've been several instances where we had to uh, do insider hunt case. For instance, let's say an employee that is will be leaving the company in about um, probably 2 or 3 weeks, then all of a sudden you started noticing a huge number of downloads of resources that are tagged with confidential. Definitely, we usually go in and start hunting using classic either the Defender Portal hunt, or we can actually use the Sentinel hunt. But in this context, we are assuming we don't have access to the internet and we don't have those tools. We want to leverage native tools like the log passer to still hunt and come up with conclusions based on our initial assumption. Don't forget, the hunt starts with an assumption, then you should actually come up with a conclusion to back your assumption, which makes sense. So enough with the chitty chatting. We will go into the case study 2 and start the hunt. So I'm going to navigate to step back. Then I think I'm going to go into case this thing will just case 2. Okay, so in case 2 I have PF firewall. It's actually PF sense logs. Then we also have the FTP server log, then the event logs as well, EVTX, then also the IS server logs in the W3S VC4 logs. So we have 4 artifacts here, and we want to use these artifacts to actually um, investigate the insider threat. Again, this is not limited to these specific logs, but in our hunt case, we're just using these logs. Do not forget, if you've got more logs, the more logs you have, the more you can actually connect the data in the logs, the better it makes sense to actually draw a conclusion from your assumption. So, access to more logs. I do not mean more logs in terms of quantity, in terms of size, or more logs in terms of from different sources. You can actually put all that together and the pieces in the puzzle to actually solve the puzzle. Okay, so we will start by first setting a path as we've done in the past, so we don't have to keep referencing the log path, so we can just run it right in this current directory. So we will set the path. I'll grab that command and paste that here. So if I run parser, it should run the tool for me without having to go back and forth. All right, so now that we've done this, what we'll do is we will first use the pfSense logs. Let's see, let's check if we can, again, this is a firewall log, so we should actually see network connections. If we can find maybe if there were any connection attempts specifically that were blocked by the firewall, in quotes, that usually is the first point to start. You want to look at the firewall logs, the parameter logs, to be sure if there had been requests that had been dropped by the firewall. Investigate those requests. If they're actually malicious or benign, then you can actually build your way back into the stack where you go to the application specific logs. So the first query we'll be running is to actually look within the pfSense firewall logs if there were connections that were dropped, in quote. So I'm going to clear this screen, and I've got the command here. I'm just going to grab this command and I'm going to paste this here. So what this is doing is we see it's actually running log parser, and we actually filtering for the date, the time, the action, source IP, destination IP, source port and destination port, protocol use, and the path. Now we're actually pointing this to the PF firewall logs, and we're saying where action allow and protocol is TCP order by date time. So we're filtering out allow to see the deny. If I run this, definitely we should be able to see, oh wow, all these were dropped. Again, remember we filtered out allow. If I filter drop, we definitely will see all the allow logs. Again, that's a huge chunk of stuff. Okay, so we can quickly now see that at this date, 2023 10 12, which is pretty recent, we at this time stamp, we started seeing that requests hitting port 445, quite classic SMB kind of requests. 139, same lot in this context. 135, our PC and all that's sorry, net bios and all the stuff. And also 139, we definitely see that these requests were dropped, and they were all coming from the same source IP and going to this destination. Again, this is a this is a tail sign. What's the right word? This is actually a sign that this could be our attacker IP. If you look at our request, we had passed the source IP and the destination IP, so we could draw a first assumption here. This could be the possible attacker IP, but again, we'll be too quick to judge. Let's take it a step further and pass that particular IP to check for all inbound traffic coming from that IP, which we have tagged in a hypothesis as suspicious, the one ending with 105. So that would be the second request here. I'm going to grab this request and I'll paste this here. So if you look at this request, again, we're selecting date, time, source IP, destination IP, but we're in this context, we are filtering for protocol TCP only, and the path is the receive. So we want to look out inbound, not outbound in this context. Now, and we're narrowing that filtering specifically to this source IP. Remember, there could be more IPs, source IPs within the logs, but we want to filter specific based on our initial assumption here. So if I run this, now we see a huge number. I'm going to drag this a bit down so we can actually get good visibility. So we see a huge number of these requests that were allowed, and we can also see they're coming from the source IP again. 443 HTTPS stuff, 2121. It's always good to know your ports, because again, that can also help you quickly judge what you're looking at. We see like a 443, we see 54. Okay, those are pretty much ephemeral ports. We can see 80, 443. Okay, now just looking at this, we probably might not be able to make meaningful sense, but already we can clearly see that, oh wow, something is happening in here. All this huge chunk of HTTP requests, actually HTTPS requests, actually coming from that IP address source. So it could be that the command and control that is used is actually encrypting the traffic in this context. That could make sense, but something unique in there caught my eye. That should be like the 2121, and that port, if we go dig into it, sometimes it's good to do a bit of research. Again, I recommend you strongly keep research handy. Just going to, this is slowing down, I'm not sure why it's slowing down. Going to Google, let's find out. This looks like FTP. Great, so this is FTP. Definitely that validates my sense of thoughts that came in. So definitely I see 2121. It means okay, those are requests going to an FTP server. Very interesting. Now we're beginning to connect the dots. If we can see those requests going to an FTP server, it means that's okay. Why would these huge number of requests be going from that particular IP? It could be a benign request, but initial assumption, we already tagged that IP as a malicious IP. So it could mean a whole lot of stuff. Maybe that guy is trying to brute force IFTP server, but again, we cannot draw conclusion yet. But from what we can see, we see 5466 and we see 2121. Those are kind of like back and forth connection to an FTP server. it does mean that this could be an authentication kind of attack that is going on here. But again, would be too quick to draw a conclusion without actually looking into more data. But I would say like a password guessing or like a brute force kind of attack seems like what's happening here or what's going on here. Now let's try to put the pieces together. What if we check the outgoing traffic that were initiated from the web server to that particular IP? Now we know he's brute forcing. There is a chance that he could be successful and maybe find a valid password, and one of the um, 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 requests initiated a connection back to the attacker's machine. We want to verify, we want to see if there are cases like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this next query, find for outgoing traffic from our machine to the attacker machine. Let's filter for those use cases. Great. Now we can see that there were unique three of these requests on port 8000 and quad 4. Now these requests are going from the server FTP server IP to the attacker machine. Again, we'll be too quick to draw a conclusion, but they do look suspicious again, because remember from my initial assumption, we've established the fact that the attacker is brute forcing. There could be a slim chance that one of those attack was successful, then a connection was initiated back to the attacker machine. But now we can see this TCP 8000. Let's go do a bit of investigation. That look more like a Python server port. I'm just going to verify that. Let's see if there's anything like that. Pretty much http. This looks like a http Python server port. Again, that actually validates my sense. Again, it's always good to actually rely on research like this to verify your assumption, because you don't want to just assume wild. So for my assumption, I can say, okay, what's happening here? If this FTP server is connecting to the attacker machine on port 8000, is it trying to like download a payload, which could be a Cobalt Strike beacon payload, or could be a Metasploit payload, could be whatever payload. Because again, over the Python server, I could just run like a Python 3 minus server, stage server, and that's run on the 8000 by default. It doesn't mean that it's always going to be on 8000. I could set the ports to 8001 or whatever, depending on my attacker's discretion. But in this context, I see that connection going back. I'm assuming that this is actually from the attacker. Um, um, this is a Python server staged by the attacker and is used to download the payload into the FTP server. So, but again, we cannot draw those conclusions. These are just assumptions still. The only way we can now start drawing conclusions is if we tie this to the FTP server logs. So we will go into the FTP server logs and we will start an analysis in there to see if we can actually make sense from these initial assumptions which we've made so far. So in this case directory, I have the FTP server log. Let's go into the FTP server log and we can see there is the log file in there. We will try to use this log file to do some more analysis, see if we can verify our initial claim of a brute force attack. If we see multiple requests coming from a particular user, definitely that tells us that this could be like a brute force attack. Or we could also see maybe other stuffs like connection back and forth, could also use that to tell. But again, don't forget the flow. First, we looked at the network log. We saw those connections, because everything will always be on the network. That's the unique thing about network logs. I usually recommend you collect as much as you can, because you can always filter down to see stuff on the network logs. Now we're taking a step backward in the chain over to the FTP server log. So let's go verify that using some queries. Okay, so what we're going to do within the FTP server log is first we'll query for IP address that was used to initiate the connection, then also query for the username that was actually used specific for that. So we would see this query. I'm going to copy this and go on my terminal and paste this. So what this query is doing, again, filtering dates, time, and all the stuff, source IP, the method used, and also the URL stem, and also the status. We're actually filtering from this particular log, which you can see is present in there. Then also the here's method. in this context, the user, that would be the username that was actually used to initiate the connection. Also, remember we're filtering the IP address as well. If I run this query, it's going to query the data, and now we would see a huge chunk of, this is a whole lot of stuff. I'm just going to scroll to the top. Okay, there's a whole lot of this connection initiated from that malicious IP under the user Frederick Krueger or F. Krueger. Now, all these requests were actually going to that particular FTP server and that is user. So it means, again, this validates my claim that this could be a brute force. Assuming the attacker knows the username, trying to verify the password. So in the FTP, in the brute force command, the username is static, but he's passed the password to like a password file and running all the entries in that file to see which one of them actually authenticates and verifies the connection. Now, at this point, something pretty much caught my eye. We can see the timestamp. They are actually in there. I think I would love to reformat this timestamp. I'm just going to grab that timestamp correction, correcting this to hour, minute, and second, so it's easy for me to reach. And paste this here. So this will fix the time, so we can actually see the time correlate now to the hours that these requests were actually hidden the server or collected within the logs. Okay, so what next can we do from this point? Now we can see the attacker name that was used. Definitely we want to check if this username actually is a valid user. If it is, it means that user probably is being attacked. Okay, again, you can't stop the username from being known most times because it's just stupid to start saying, oh, okay, how do you respond to username not being known? But yeah, but you have an information at hand that can actually help you understand the chain of attack. So how about we try to do something else? Let's try to search for successful um, um, connection from that username. Now that we know Freddy Krueger was being used to brute force, if we see for this request to say 331, definitely if you know your FTP stuff, you definitely know what that means. How about we look for specific requests that were successful with like a 220, 230 or something like that. If we can actually do that, it definitely means we can now understand if the attack was successful or if it wasn't successful. So let's do that. Okay, so our next query, I'm just checking the time. All right, so our next query is going to be filtering for authentication that was successful. And if you look at the query, we also referencing the time so we can fix that time issue. And we're looking for usernames and also with status successful. Then we're actually setting the status the method to be passed. If it's passed, it means it was successful authentication. And also the status code will be 200 in this context. Then also we see a 300 kind of like filtering for that as well. If we run this command, great. Now we can see the 230. We can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of these requests were successful. It does mean that the brute force actually, we already had drawn a first conclusion here. The brute force attack was successful because from our logs, we can see that definitely all the requests that were sent out of all the bunch of them, 5 of them were successful. So at this point, you start thinking, what can we do? Can we just stop here and say, oh, wow, the attacker was successful? Or can we tie this to maybe other forms of artifact that we can use to come up with other useful conclusions? I would love to narrow down into the second option. Let's say we go into the log file itself. I would go out of this, go into case 2, into FTP. Then I'm going to open this up with like my notepad and just look at what is inside that log, raw, in the raw context. Okay, I'll drag this open a bit. Okay, so I will narrow down to the base of this file. Again, it's always good to understand what's happening in this log file. I can see all the requests from F. Krueger, and I can see the ones with the pass. Like I showed you, you can see this was actually passed. And then we can also see the connection closed here, connection closed here. There are a bunch of requests in here, both successful and success and failed requests. So by looking at this, we can definitely understand that, okay, Freddy Krueger was of F. Krueger, whatever the name is, actually was doing a password guessing. And actually that password guessing was successful, but it's an authenticated user or even with the authenticated session, can we check if maybe he downloaded some file or uploaded some file or moved stuff back and forth? That should be like FTP activity, which is what we want to pretty much look into in this next case. So what we'll do is within the same logs, we can actually filter for those specific kinds of events. So we want to find out if there are records of this user with the authenticated session successfully downloading the file or uploading the file to our FTP server. Okay, so first we're gonna check. It's 20 minutes down. We're gonna check for download activities. Then we're also gonna check for upload activities. So again, we verified that yes, authenticated session was successful. What happened? Activities. There's a whole lot of stuff in here. Great. If I go to the top, we can see the chain of the command. Staff directory was actually browsing directory in this context. Also browsing here, we can see etr. We can see other commands that were executed on the server. shop.asp, robot the text. Okay, browsing the file systems. See the staff directory. Interesting. Okay, then we can also see a bunch of these that were also done. How about we want to verify beyond just this random stuff if the attacker actually maybe uploaded a file to the server. Now that would be like the classic way to get like a web session back to the CNC or the command and control center, because he had already brought forth initial access is established. But beyond initial access, are there cases where he was able to get a persistent shell or something? We can actually check for upload activities. I'm going to run that. Oh, there are two of those unique cases. So cmd asp.asp, this is actually a web shell. cmd asp2.asp, these are web shells. So we can see that the attacker actually had uploaded web shells. Now these web shells will be generic as to calling back to like the stage to actually initiate a connection back. That could be like a meta exploit thing or some covert strike or whatever the context the attacker is using in this. But we can already establish the fact that yes, there were upload activities, and these activities were web shells. We could check these files if we have access to the server, verify what they look like. We can definitely see they're malicious. But just to make you understand, these were collected on the logs. Great. Now, how about we try to see if the files, now we know these files were uploaded, who made the requests, how were the requests crafted, from what source to what destination. Those useful information will really help us. So we can't find this useful information in the FTP server logs, but we do know that we have the web server logs, which is the IIS log. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate into that folder and check within the IIS logs and see if we can find those requests from the source to the destination. Now we're going the next layer deep into the analysis. We started with the network to the FTP server, which is the application specific. Then now to the server itself. Let's go verify the requests that were made to that application. What exactly were those requests and from where were they coming from? So that's what we're going to do right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the web. 23 minutes. We're going to go into the next log. I'll go a step back. And I think that's the W3C. This will not complete. I'm just going to DR on that. Go into the W3, whatever. So in here, we have the web application log, not the FTP server log now. We're going to query for any successful upload for these two files and who actually made the request and where was the request directed to. We will query the log. Great. Now we can see a bunch of this. Now it validates our initial assumption that IP definitely malicious. We can see all from that IP. Status code 300, which means that was successful. We can also see the path is dropping these files in the temp directory on the server. That's pretty much sleek. Okay, great. In recent, I was actually doing analysis and I found a few things dropped in. It was an environment where they had Defender MD and all a bunch of stuff, but within the configuration, there were parts that had been exempted by the EDRMD or whatever, and the attacker was actually dropping these files in those exemption folders because again they don't get flagged. by default defender will not look or query those directories, then executing from there in memory. That was pretty slick stuff. Now, they are cases where those actually are successful in the wild, but we can see that our attacker is a smart one, downloading these files and dropping them in a temp directory. How about we try to maybe see a list of all the people who had visited that attacker's server, or the requests that were made to the attacker server, the kind of files that were pretty much hosted on that server or downloaded from that server to our local environment. We could run another request to verify that. Again, we want to see if the web shell actually established a session and the session was actually valid or live and was able to communicate back and forth to the CNC for the attacker. So taking our assumption further, we will check all the websites that have been visited by that machine, which is claimed our attacker. We can see a bunch of these actually return 200. Okay, we can see the path that were visited, main, shopping, bio. But I'm saying something here. This is a bunch of 404. Again, if you know the HTTP response code, definitely we can see the 404. If you pretty much don't know, in this context, we have the 200, which is actually valid request and valid. Okay, we have the server 500, we've got the 300 redirect, we've also got the 4 within the space. In that context, that would be like a forced browsing enumeration. We can see a bunch of them actually. The guy was trying to browse this path within the brute force, and they were returning a 404. That could mean something important for us, because it could mean, is he trying to do like a forced browsing or resource enumeration in this context? Definitely, yeah. Those pattern exist. A 404 kind of like return back to the attacker. But how about we now try to narrow down and see all the response code that were returned to this particular attacker guy? Are they redirects? Are they successful requests? Are they completely blocked in this context? We would use the next query to filter for those kinds of requests from that particular IP address. And we can see there are about 4 of them. We've got a shitload of my bad, a ton of these 447,000. That's a huge number. And out of all that, 27 were actually out of the total requests. Sorry, 27 successful requests is it 200. We can also see the 301 and the 403 in this context. Now we're beginning to build our assumption to be more robust. We know that there were requests that were not successful. There were requests that were successful. In this context, we don't want to go chase any requests that were not successful. That's just going to lead us in a different path. How about we narrow our scope to these 27 requests that were successful, and we see what kinds of requests are those that return success? Then we can now pretty much understand what exactly was happening within those space or within those part of the application that the attacker actually had successful return requests back to him. So we'll narrow down the filtering to the successful requests, and let's see what useful information we can actually get from the requests that were successful. Oh, my bad. I'm going to copy that again. Okay. All right. So there are quite a number of them. Let's slow down a bit. And now I'm pretty much rushing. Let's look at this. We will start from the timestamp at the top. 1235. Okay, the path. Okay, 3514. Check the CSS style, the image logo, index, the HTML. Okay, the JavaScript. Then the main.asp. Okay, rubber the text. Useful stuff can be found there as well. Shop ASP. Now, if you look at these are all within the 1 minute window. But going down to this 35, 37, which is within like around a 1 minute window, we see is browsing the start directory log.txt. Is this guy trying to like clear logs? Then we can also see log.txt there. Interesting. Then look at the timestamp between these two requests and the next request. This guy spent approximately 14 to 15 minutes here. Now I'm just narrowing down on this. I haven't done this in the past because I want to make you understand that sometimes it's good to look at those time difference. You can actually build a case for what the guy is actually doing as they actually browsing the file. So I just can see that clearly he spent more time between these and the next one. Guy could be clearing those logs or deleting log files, trying to hide or cover tracks, then dumping all this bunch of stuff in there. Again, could be he's manipulating the log so he doesn't, these activities are not logged. That could most likely be the case here because he doesn't want to, he wants to cover his tracks. So he doesn't want to download files and the logs are already stored and trying to delete those logs. Rather, he would modify the log to not allow logs activities from this kind of event to be logged. And then that way he's definitely going to evade that login mechanism that you have in place. Once again, it's good to have this clear cut visibility looking at the time. What we're going to do next is we're going to see what directories that were actually found and what directories were not found. Then we'll now tie this down to our event logs to see if we can narrow down to the staff directory to see what exactly this guy was doing within these staff directory where we have the log.txt file. So looking at the directories that were found, I'm going to copy that query. We can see that temp was found. That definitely was putting his stuff in here, staff directory as well. So what we can do now is we need to, at this point, tie whatever we've seen so far. Just note, you should be documenting again screenshot as you're doing this. I'm not doing all of those. We want to tie what we've seen so far. We still have the event logs. In the event logs, we could actually find more useful stuff to help draw, come up with a conclusion that is valid. Again, if we see event IDs that are unique in the context can help us understand if there are cases like special privileges assigned on new login or like privilege modification or maybe process hollowing or maybe stuff like assigning rights within the particular server itself. It's a telltale sign that definitely this guy actually was doing some post exploitation that can also help us understand something interesting. So next we're going to go into I think in this directory we have the evtx, so that's the event logs. We will look at the event logs. We've got the event logs for the firewall, the security, as also we've got the terminal services, which is actually monitoring activities on the terminal level. So we'll be analyzing these logs to see what we can find. Obviously, there will be useful stuffs. I actually just have to sell out here. There will be useful stuff because we're going to the next level deep. We know that we've seen the network logs, we've seen the application, that's the FTP log, we've seen the web application log. Now we're going down to the event logs, which will pretty much be on the machine. What exactly are the activities that were logged for the entire activity that I had done on the machine? So let's narrow down into that. Okay, so we will be using our event logs 32. That's a lot. This is actually long. First, we'll be listing all the event IDs that we have within the event logs. Again, Windows event log in this context actually useful. We will see that we've got 450 for 4625. And if you don't know what 4625 is actually very useful. That's actually field login. We can also see 23, 46, 24. 46, 24 is actually successful login. We can also see 46, 72. 46, 72, 16 of them. That's actually special privilege assigned. Will be good to actually review the event log so you know the IDs and also how important they are. Again, if we're not collecting these logs, definitely we have zero visibility. We can tie all we've seen so far to the event on the Windows machine. That's why it's good to have a full coverage. Remember from the start, I did mention the more logs you're able to collect and put together, the more you can actually make sense of the investigation. So let's narrow down our investigation to successful authentication. That would be 4624. Let's see all the successful authentication by who and from who. So by looking at the event log, we can see server 01. Okay, our concern here is this F Kruger. We can see F Kruger. Then just next to that, we can see actually admin. Also, is this guy actually trying to elevate privilege or assign special privilege to himself? Then we can also see admin. That's concerning. So what we'll try to do is let's filter a bit more. We've seen the successful authentication. We've seen we're able to extract part of the token. Then what we want to do is let's look for the not successful authentication. That would also help us do like a minus, understand exactly where we have a gap here. my bad. I'm gonna copy that again, and I'm gonna paste that. Okay, so we have a bunch of F. Kruger not successful. So again, this validates our initial claim that this guy was actually doing some brute forcing stuff. So we know that he was successful. We could see some signs that he even elevated privilege, assigned special token to himself, special privilege to himself. But a good way to check for successful authentication, list the account that has been authenticated successfully and from where is to tie all this together. So we're going to use a particular query to tie all this together. So we'll see the successful authentication, accounts that were authenticated successfully, then from where who actually is actually responsible for that authentication. So the next query, 35, this is going to get almost 40 minutes or 50 minutes. So we'll see all the authentication that was successful, who and from where. That query narrows down to we start seeing telltale sign from this 105, our target IP. We see this was under the context admin. Again, it verify a claim that this guy pretty much got the admin credential as well, authenticated, and at that timestamp, that's 20. I should reference this time. I should change time. Okay, then we can also see the successful from this and this as well on the admin. Now, this is actually a telltale sign that at 12, at approximately this time, 2019, 40, 20, 30, 33, 51, I should convert the time. This guy actually, Freddy Krueger in this context, used the cleartext password because you can see here pretty much nothing, authenticated to the server, then also authenticated on admin accounts, then also on the network account as well in this context. Now, all these are very useful information, but it's also good to check the firewall EBTX file to see. We also have that file in here. See if we can tie some of this quick validation to what we're seeing on the firewall. That way we can have a complete conclusion. I know this is already taking too long, but I don't want to stop here. Let me just complete this. If it makes sense, fine. If it doesn't, you guys pretty much will decide and where you want to stop or how far you want to go. So on the next, what we're going to do is we'll review the firewall EBTX file and see if we can actually query for specific event time or check for the firewall file to see what kind of activities were recorded. Then also if there were exceptions that were added, who added those exceptions. Obviously the attacker in this context will be smart enough to add exceptions so can allow his connections back and forth from a CNC so that it doesn't really block or fail or make noise in the environment. So let's do the final stage. I'm going to go into my firewall EBTX file, then I'm going to look into the logs that are actually within the firewall EBTX file. Okay, so to look into our firewall logs, we'll be verifying what logon types. So we see we have this firewall EBTX, we also have security EBTX, which we'll be using later. We'll verify what logon types were actually added. Now, there are specific logon types like logon types 3, which is network logon type 7 unlocked, then also logon type 8 in this context, cleartext for FTP. We want to see if any of those were added. First, we'll query the types that we have within the logs. So we've got three, we've got that's 2004, we've got 2006, 8, and 3. Okay, so for within these logon types that we've got already seen, 3, 2, 1, and 3s, we want to verify if there were exceptions that were added and who actually added those exceptions. It's always good to check because if there were exceptions, it means the attacker is actually trying to create that path to evade defense or detection. So he can actually have persistence and not just persistence, also leverage a path to create a channel where he can move stuff back and forth to that environment. Okay, so now we've seen some very useful logon type here. We've talked about those. How about we see who actually was responsible for those exceptions on our firewall? Again, from our command, we can definitely see a user mode from driver host, but we can see OpenRDP for attacker. That's actually sellouts. Again, it's not always going to be this easy, but it's just to show you that, oh yeah, this guy actually opened up RDP and we see that modification on 2004. Again, that's very unique. If the firewall settings changed, we usually would see 2003, but we're seeing 2004. Very unique to understand that this guy opened up a connection for RDP. Then let's verify who made these changes. We'll be looking at the 2003 now to know who was responsible for that change. I'm gonna grab these quickly. Great. Now we're beginning to connect the dots, so we can see a bunch of those entries returned for us here. What this is pretty much showing us is there are quite a number of other events that were modified, not just the 2004. There's 2008, 004, 003, 6, and yeah, great. So it's always good to understand these events, but my interest for now would be on the 2003 that we see right there, because it definitely is a sellout that firewall settings had been changed by someone. So who is responsible for this will now take this firewall EVTX log and tie it or marry it to, we have the terminal service logs. Let's see if we can tie to the terminal service logs, if we can actually tell the terminal sessions that were open, who actually authenticated for the sessions, and who is this target guy. Again, it's still a whole lot connecting to do here, but we'll still push it a bit further. Okay, so finally, we're going to check within our terminal service logs, and we'll see what we can actually draw as conclusion from the terminal sessions that were open and activities that were done. So what this is showing us, pretty much, we can see the command is pretty much using log parser to verify and extract event ID for terminal service remote connection. We can see 6 of those from 261.1149. Then also the other ones from the 20523 and 258. Now, what I want to point out here is 261 is unique. It's actually terminal service received a connection. Then 1149 is actually successful authentication, and also 258 is a terminal service listener started. So that's for the remote connection. Again, remember at this point RDP connection was open, and the fact that RDP connection was open, we saw that the authentication at the terminal session was done, then connection received, and also opened up for RDP connection. So what we're going to do next is we're going to try to tie that to when the terminal service was started, so we can have an idea of at what time or what timestamp was this whole connection initiated or attack began from the attacker's standpoint. So I'm going to run the next query. We can see that that came from these targets. Interesting. Okay, at this time stamp, and then we can also see the count for that. So what we're going to do next is we're going to search for maybe any specific RDP connections that were logged in the terminal session that were open. I'm going to grab the query. I think that query is broken. Okay, so just fixed it. The event ID is 261 as we verified. 261 is actually terminal service receive connection. So we're going to grab this query and we'll paste that here. Man, okay, paste that here. Okay, great. Now we can see all the connection that we actually received coming from this target here. That's this guy of 01 here, and we can also see those actually remote connection from remote service manager with Microsoft. The final thing we're going to do is, now that we know that RDP connection was initiated and the connection started, we want to see if there are successful authentication, because again, if there are, then who is this attacker guy in sense of an IP address, because that's will also help us narrow down to drawing like a root cause analysis or stuff like that. Okay, I'm going to copy this last command I have here, and now we can actually tie it down to the IP. So it started from that assumption, hypothesis, and then we're drawing back to that hypothesis, assumption IP. This is definitely malicious IP. This guy is our attacker, and this guy actually had done quite a whole lot. Let's try to put the pieces together to see what was done. Attack started. We verified the timestamp at about 12. We also verified that it was performed from this IP address, as we can verify here. Then beyond that, we also saw the first step was enumeration, browsing the staff directory, then also found some useful directory like the logs, then also try to do a port scan because we saw those multiple scanning activity, which signifies a port scan. Then beyond that, after scanning port, try the password brute force attack, found successful authentication to the FTP server without credentials and also with credentials. Then also upload malicious content, which is those ASPS files. Then also beyond that, now we see kind of like a meta session started with a Python port that was open, 8,000. Then also we also verified that there was a break between that 15 minutes window, which shows that the guy was pretty much doing some maybe purge escalation, clearing log files, and also maintaining persistence to gain admission, to gain admin access. Sorry. Then by looking at the firewall logs, we also saw he added exceptions for RDP to actually get connections back. Okay. Then we saw the terminal service disabling firewall as well was done from the terminal service as we saw. Then the attacker also pretty much created a domain account as we saw from the terminal service as well. Now, these are quite a lot to tie together just by looking at log files. I understand this could be pretty much a hefty stuff to do, but this comes handy, trust me, when you don't have access to like online tools that you would use. The next recording I would use Azure Log Explorer to show that we can actually simplify most of these. If we have access to the internet to use tools like that, we can still do a bit of analysis quick of stuff and get it off our links. Okay, thanks for your patience and your time. This is about 46 minutes. This is so long. It's the longest video I've done so far in my entire life. Okay, I hope you like the content. If you do, please do like and subscribe to our channel. And that's motivates us to spend this quality time doing more stuff like this for you. We'll be seeing you in the next recording. Thanks for your time and have a good one. Bye.